yes, it's that time once again. Let's check in on modern art. Whereas we've observed literal trash being presented as modern art numerous times before, now they've taken it one step further by using trash to obscure and denigrate actual works of art. This is Carnarvon Castle, 1815-19, by Anthony Van Dyck Copley Fielding. A bad quality internet image doesn't do it justice, but wow, I mean, look at the light. I'd like to take a closer look at that. I'd like to soak in its full majesty. Well, you can't because some idiots dumped a load of cardboard boxes in front of it. No, there hasn't been a delivery truck accident. The bin men haven't forgot to show up. This is supposedly a work of art. Take a look at the jaw-dropping artistry, skill and precision it took to create this masterpiece.
You know, it's funny how there are several forms of art that are just plain junk, and it's kind of like the emperor's new clothes. It's kind of like, oh, you're just not cool enough to appreciate art on this level. You know, you're just not cool enough to understand how this is art. But you know, in as much as a lot of people have said beauty is in the eye of the beholder, that is a recipe for mental illness. If you are the only person that thinks you are beautiful, perhaps you are not quite right. You know, perhaps you are not all there upstairs. You know, if you are the only person in the world that thinks you are beautiful, we can't call you beautiful. You know, perhaps you shouldn't be given that title of beautiful. You know, so if you are the only one in the world who thinks something is art, there's a problem. If you know we are going by beauties in the eye of the beholder, you know, it depends on who is looking at it. You know, if you are the only one who thinks it's beautiful, there's a problem. That without saying, in as much as people have different tastes, you know, and you know, that is what it is. We must recognize that there has to at least be a responsible, large group of people that would appreciate, or a type of people that will appreciate or see the beauty that you are seeing. You know, even though every single person in the world may not see it, but at least there has to be a large group of people that, or a reasonable, sizable amount of people that will see the beauty in it. But now it's kind of like, oh, anything goes. You know, if you feel good, you know, just draw anything. You know, basically, somebody can draw nonsense that a 3-year-old can draw, and it will go as abstract art, and oh, it is abstract art, it is beautiful, it is amazing. You know, it is foolishness. You know, a monkey can throw paint on a canvas and it will be called abstract art, and you know, everybody will say that it's beautiful, you know, especially if they do not know that it was done by a monkey. You know, so it is unfortunate. You see this kind of foolishness that has gone on to art. It helps to degrade art as a whole. It's destroying art as a whole, because now the whole thing now begins to look like a scam. Then even the good paintings now falls into question of why is this Leonardo da Vinci selling for 10 million or 20 million? Why is it priced like that? Because it's like, you know, I can see better drawings in a comic book, or drawings that I may prefer in an old comic book, or especially since even new comic books are now drawn nonsense, especially since they are pushing, when it comes to comic books, there's a lot of feminism, and oh, let us push female creators. You know, they do not even look at the talent that is brought to the table. It's, oh, let us meet quotas of pushing female creators. So now we have a lot of new Marvel comic books that are drawn by people who do not even read comics or like comics, but are drawing nonsense. You know, it does not meet that Marvel standard, but you know, it is what it is. I won't even go into the storylines. You know, now even with DC, you know, Superman. There's Superman. I think he now has a son that is a clone or whatever that is gay. You know, so there's now whether gay Superboy, something like that. You know, they are doing all kinds of nonsense, and the propaganda is first, and it is obvious. You know, so we as Christians, we must take positions of authority, make Christian entertainment, you know, and make sure that we go into politics and kick out all these crazy people, because they are working towards a bigger picture. The individual pieces may not know it, but there is a bigger picture of foolishness that all these people are working towards, you know, and it's a world that we do not want to see.
which basically amounted to dumping the boxes willy-nilly all over the floor out of trash bags.
Basically, all the cardboard sections are die cut by a factory, and then subsequently I have to fold up all those kind of shapes together and glue them together with hot glue.
Right, so essentially he glued some factory-made cardboard boxes together. Wow, Michelangelo, eat your heart out. This isn't art, this is the desecration of art. This is vandalising beauty. Art critic Alexander Adams wrote of his horror at discovering what the Museum of Wales had done. The boxes touched the frame.
And this is what the museum is doing. Wow.
And the glazing of the painting. The pile of boxes is an intervention by...
It is not just an obscure gallery somewhere or by some upstart or something, who just managed to get a few, got some money together and, put together something, This is something that the museum is putting together.
By someone designated an artist invited to interfere with a handsome painting. The activist staff of museums today will not allow you to enjoy art of the past. They will employ artivists to degrade art.
And of course, that is it. They have put all these activists and all these anti-white people who are like, oh, European history is too white. What do you want European history to be? European history has to be white. There has to be a lot of white people there, and it's just like saying African history, there are too many dark-skinned folks, in African history. What do you mean? It is African history. What do you expect to see? So when you bring all these activists, all these woke-activists into everything, this is the nonsense that they push. They are like the foot soldiers of the New World Order, knowingly or unknowingly, pushing forth an idiotic agenda.
To embarrass its pretensions towards profundity, sublimity and aesthetic rapture, which are undercut by interventions that prevent us from engaging with art to which we respond warmly. New art that we do not respect is used as a tool to separate us from old art we do respect. The cardboard boxes are supposed to represent a protest against the local council building houses, once again stripping art of its authentic, true purpose. Beauty for beauty's sake alone, and merely hijacking it as a vehicle for a tedious political message, while obscuring and replacing actual art. Go to Tate Modern and you'll literally find scraps of metal dropped on the floor being described as art. But at least you know that the real art is safely ensconced in its own space away from all this at Tate Britain. Not so at the Museum of Wales, where they're so obsessed with making us feel ashamed of our heritage. They'll literally heap rubbish in front of a captivating old painting simply to taint and demean it, then pretentiously describe that defilement as a work of art, or as Adams calls it, humiliate, degrade, replace. The elite abusing the power of cultural institutions to signal what they think about the native population. Masters of the past did not disfigure or restrict access to other art. They simply made art that was more spectacular and accomplished than what came before. They could trump competitors by being better, shorn of skills, unable to create art, cut off from tradition, functioning as quasi-activists, artivism. Today's pseudo-artists are invited to beat artists of the past by physically preventing you appreciating that art. They do all this in the name of decolonizing art. What they're actually doing is recolonizing your culture. No white Westerner should ever be allowed to take pride in the achievement of their ancestors, and no white Westerner must ever be allowed to authentically engage with the bounty of beauty furnished by their forebears, without constantly being made to feel self-conscious and guilty about it. For it's not enough for the museum to just molest your eyes with this abhorrent cack. No. All the senses must be flooded with psychic pollution. Accompanying the actual trash lying on the floor is the audible detritus of the sounds of social justice. Blaring audio of African singing and chanting is so loud that it echoes throughout the entire gallery. You will not be permitted silence or retreat. Your masters insist you cannot evade silenced voices. They will be imposed on you. As Gramsci recommended, allow no space for retreat or contemplation, permit no field to remain uncontrolled. Subvert every activity in the extension of revolutionary consciousness raising.
So it just basically anti-white racism invading arts. All this nonsense is going to create a generation of white people who will hate dark-skinned people and hate everything non-white. That is the purpose, and that is the only thing that these BLM movements and all these BLM types, all these pro-black types are doing. Because, you see, what is the solution for racism? Love. But ask any BLM person or or all those types of folks if they love white people or if they are promoting love. Of course, they will like to say they are promoting love, but phrase it differently. Do you love white people? Do you think that it is good for dark-skinned people to love white people? And how is any of your message or anything that you are doing advancing that? These are people that hate white people. When you are doing this and you have redefined racism and say that basically only dark-skinned people, only white people can be racist, or that racism means that you have to have power, you have to have structures of power, you have to have system, blah blah blah, and all kinds of things. And since dark-skinned people have never had that, which is a lie, but since dark-skinned people have never had that according to them, so it is only basically white people that can be racist. And I've seen even this kind of rhetoric come from Talib Kweli, and he said it's a white guy, and the white guy was like, yes, of course. And there are a lot of crazy woke white people who are buying into this, but understand this reality about this white people who are going along with it and are pushing forth this BLM type agenda of anti-whiteism. When it presses at home on their doorstep, they will do a 180. If you remember during the BLM protest, there was a white guy, that came out with a gun when the BLM protesters came on his compound, and the media was like, oh, that what he did was wrong, blah blah blah, and all that kind of stuff. That guy was a Democrat. That guy used to donate to the Clintons and all of that. But you see, when things like that come to their doorstep, that is when they begin to realize, and they change. And it's going to be a very sad thing, because we now have a lot of African Americans. Like, for example, back in the day when I was young, if an African American or son of African descent, if they failed an exam, it was because they did not read hard. It was like, oh, you have to study hard. But now, when an African American fails an exam, it is white supremacy's fault. It is because his ancestors were slaves, and then he's facing the trauma and white supremacy structure and all of that is the reason why he's scoring an F. Is the reason why he's failing in his academics. So we now have a situation where a lot of African Americans, when an African American is poor or unsuccessful, he's excused and he's cop out. Instead of him to say, I'm being a loser in this situation, let me get up, if he's over 30 and he's still living with his mom, oh, let me get out of this situation. No, it is not that. It is now the white man's fault. It's because of white supremacy and structure this and structure that. Oh, it is because of white privilege. Oh, it is racist for a white man or anybody to think that I'm in this situation and it is my fault. If you're white and you think that you're a white supremacist, if you're dark skinned and you think that you are a coon, all these kinds of nonsense. So you now have a generation of people who feel that they are entitled to everything and that nothing is their responsibility. They take responsibility for nothing. And we have a system of media, the CNN, the MSNBC, and the white liberal that is pushing that ideology. When the media and the white liberal stops pushing that, all of a sudden we have a bunch of dark-skinned people who now feel like they have been betrayed, the whole world is against them, and they will never stand up. Even if, there's nothing wrong with their legs, they will never stand up because they have now been programmed to think that the reason I'm like this is because of white supremacy.
Humiliate, degrade, replace. In other rooms of the gallery, Western art, British art, has simply been removed and replaced with bronze heads of black men, photographs of random black women, along with slips of paper propagandizing you with anti-racism regime talking points, along with walls of text lecturing you about the trauma of slavery. Yes, this in the National Museum of Wales. You're not here to contemplate art, you are here to be confronted with instruction disguised as starting a conversation. You are here to endure your allotted struggle session. You are here to forcibly consume the message. The centrepiece of the exhibition focuses on decimating the legacy of Sir Thomas Picton, a Welsh officer of the British Army who fought in the Napoleonic Wars and was killed during a bayonet charge during the Battle of Waterloo. Once revered for his bravery and courage, exalted as a legend of British history, the Museum of Wales is hell-bent on burying that legacy in a metaphorical, muddy, unmarked grave, with Picton's portrait having originally been removed from public display at the behest of deranged Black Lives Matter activists. By ripping Picton out of his historical context, blaming him for the slave trade, and then in turn blaming you, the insufficiently repentant, white, privileged visitor. They've literally surrounded his portrait in a cheap packing frame as part of their bid to reframe history, to suggest Picton's legacy deserves to be hidden in the basement, ignored, forgotten, gathering dust. The portrait is polluted by an explainer, another act of contextual shaming. It is surrounded by descriptions of punishment in Trinidad at the time. There is no mention of comparable treatment of criminals in Great Britain at that time, which is done to deliberately skew visitor understanding of Picton's governorship. This is an act of ritual humiliation as primitive and as crude as you will ever see in a museum. It is also a flex, a chance for the elite to show their power by disposing of European art and replacing it with non-European art, by using museum resources to degrade a famous Welsh war hero. It echoes their intention for the population. They cannot help but announce in advance what they will subject you to. Strangely, there's no mention whatsoever of the West African and Barbary Arab slave trade. Gee, I wonder why.
That is true. You know, there was more slavery in Africa. A lot of Africans owned slaves, and you know, the white man, you know, the so-called white man did not introduce slavery to Africa. If anything, it is the other way around. It is Africa that introduced it to the white man. You know, so they learnt it from Africa, if anything at all. You know, if you want to try that, because when you look through history, what nation had in the earliest days the highest population of slaves outside of Babylon, you know, which had a lot of, you know, people where the ancestors of Africans are, you know, it is Egypt. So who had the most slaves and who did, you know, slavery? And even to today, the majority of slaves today, apart from the one that Biden is helping with the sex trafficking slave trade that is basically going on and very fruitful and profitable right now in America, thanks to the open borders. You know, that aside, you know, where is official slavery practiced? You know, it is still done well, you know, in Africa. And a lot of it is also done under the guise of houseboy and house girl, you know. So you can look into that, you know. So the whole pattern of all of that, you know, still lives on very, very well, mostly in Africa. So, but why don't they show this? You know, there is a war on white people. Now, for those of you who are watching this and are like, look, what about your skin color? Why do you care? You see, if you don't care about others, you know, it says a lot about your humanity, you know, and lack of. You know, Martin Luther King would have given an arm and a leg for a lot of white people to care about his plight and the plight of his people at that time. So why don't you do the same? Why don't you care about others? You know, you have to give what you want to receive. You know, so that is just common sense. But that aside, you have to understand that for racism to end, you know, we have to look at each other as human. You have to look at me and, you know, don't see somebody don't see my race, see a human, and I have to look at you and not see your race, see a human. You know, that is something that has to be done, and that is how a nation that has people of different colors and tongues can only work. They all have to come under one umbrella of, oh, we are American. You know, we are not looking at skin color, we are not looking at tongue, we are not looking at that. We are all Americans, or we are all this, or we are all that. You know, so whatever umbrella that nation is, let that nation umbrella be the umbrella that you all see yourself as. You know, so on a larger scale, you know, let me not even go into that. Let's keep watching the video so that we won't spend forever, making this video.
In the National Museum of Wales, they seek to diminish and desecrate a Welsh icon. Sir Thomas Picton has been cancelled. Before Picton got reframed, the museum produced and posted a video of a brown Muslim man slagging him off.
Felly, beth am I fynd I weld y so-called arwr yma te? Should have
So basically, this is recolonization that is in your face. Recolonization that is done in the eyes, in the name of racial justice and equality. This is the new way to discriminate. And keep in mind that, as Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The same way they are doing it to this group. Soon, when it will be your group, don't complain. Just like the LGBT folk, they enjoy bullying others. They enjoy discriminating against others. They enjoy cancelling others. But soon, when they start being cancelled, nobody should complain because they enjoy doing it to others.
Bod y portread fwyaf sydd yn yr amgueddfa ei hun. Ond, dim unrhyw darn o wybodaeth.
Once again, the elite using the human shield of minority groups to broadcast their values and what they think of you. As Adams points out, the gallery functions as an apologia for people who never even experienced slavery. It's organised by an elite who despise the indigenous people of Wales, whom they see as culpable for slavery. Adams suggests that the National Museum of Wales should be renamed the National Hall of Ritual Shaming. Humiliate, degrade, replace. The exhibition was created in alliance with the
something. And this is the interesting about
Sahara Advisory.
If you want a white man, if you have it in your mind and you think it's okay for a white man to kneel and kiss your feet, what separates your heart from the white slave owner of many centuries ago that you are trying to that you claim you are better than, and that you are looking upon and condemning? What makes your heart different from his, if this is what you want? If this is what gives you pleasure, if this is what pleases you. You want white people on their knees, lying, prostrate, kissing your feet. The white slave owner at that time, he wanted dark-skinned people, not for this, but to work his farm. That is actually better. His heart is better, as unfortunate as disnoble as that was. His heart is much more cleaner than this individual here who wants this, especially living in this time and day, not then.
Humiliate, degrade, replace. The exhibition was created in alliance with the Sub-Sahara Advisory Panel, and the decision to cancel Picton was made by them too.
Gyda phobl ifanc o'r SSAP I helpu penderfynu.
Because obviously the National Museum of Wales should reflect the interests of Sub-Saharan Africans. I'm sure in Sub-Saharan Africa, their museums are full of exhibitions about the First Welsh War of Independence and the work of Dylan Thomas. We know why they do all this. Once moral standards are obliterated, the malaise of moral relativism takes hold, and the new moral compass becomes anything they say it is. Drag queen storytime, a progressive, enriching learning experience for children, for example. Similarly, once beauty standards are obliterated, anything can be called art. Actual skill and artistry is no longer fundamental to the work of art. Its political message becomes the be-all and end-all. The art is merely a hastily constructed Trojan horse for the agenda, for the message. And that's why everything they produce is vile and ugly, because their agenda is vile and ugly, because they are vile and ugly. Ye shall know them by their fruit, and their fruit is as rotten as their black hearts. As Roger Scruton said, once we start to celebrate ugliness, then we become ugly too. The art, in their eyes, is the desecration of our heritage, the politically correct revision of our history, the ritual abasement of the native population. Humiliate, degrade, replace.
shout out to Paul Joseph Watson for putting together this video. That being said, let's say a brief prayer. In Jesus' name. Lord Father, I thank you for this. I bless you and for what you have done and all you are doing in your lives. Father, I pray, Lord Father, that all that has been communicated, I pray, Lord Father, that it will be understood in accordance with your word and your will. I pray, Lord Father, that the war against white people, the war against light-skinned people, I pray, Lord Father, that it will be addressed, your will be done. All that is going on will be exposed, brought out to the light. And I pray, Lord Father, that the perpetrators who are pushing for this war, they are going to face justice. They are going to face the consequences of their actions in the name of Jesus. I pray, Lord Father, for Paul Joseph Watson. I pray, Lord Father, you bless him. I pray, Lord Father, that if he doesn't know you, doors will open for him to get an opportunity to get to know you and to grow in the knowledge of your word and be a force, a greater force of light and righteousness in this world. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for joining with that prayer. Remember to check out Alfred.vip and also subscribe and like, all things Alfred across every platform that you see anything Alfred, including this one. Thank you and God bless you.
What you spread is what you get. Give your best, you get the best. Dress your best and people see the best. I'm on my parole. I'm on my parole. I'm on my parole. I'm on my parole. Parole with a suit, parole with the swag, parole with a can, parole with the stash, parole with a hat, parole with the class, parole with a stash, parole with the fash. I'm on my parole. I'm on my parole. I'm on my parole. I'm on my parole. Say this prayer audibly if you have not given your heart to Jesus Christ. Dear God, I believe in my heart that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came, died, and was raised from the dead to save me. I confess him, Lord, over my life and ask you to give me your Holy Spirit to live within me. I receive your Spirit by faith and thank you for I am now born again. In Jesus' name, amen. If you just prayed that prayer, congratulations, you're now a Christian. Go to Alfred.vip and click the salvation prayer link in the main menu to get resources that will help you with your work with God. God bless you.